S&Q mode. Here you can choose your record frame rate and the output frame rate. For example, if you record at 24 FPS with an output of 120 FPS, you will have a slow motion of 5 times. It is also possible to create a quick motion, for example a time-lapse, by setting the record FPS at 24 and the output at 2 FPS, and that will give you a 12 times quick motion video. Which one should you use for slow motion? S&Q or normal movie slow motion? Simply said, if you need the audio with your slow motion, like I did at the beginning of the video, you should use the normal movie slow motion. This means you will get a 120 FPS file, which you need to slow down yourself. If you want the footage slowed down for you, choose the S&Q setting. This will save you quite some time in post-production, since you don't have to make space on your timeline and slow down every file. And it's also important to know that S&Q does not record audio, and everything you do is irreversible. But there's more to it, and it gets a little bit technical, but it's important to understand this in order to get the highest quality out of your slow motions. We're going to talk about megabits per second, written as Mbps or in Sony menus just as M. Mbps is the amount of data that's recorded each second. It is often confused with megabytes per second, which has to do with transfer speeds of, for example, SD cards or your internet. The key thing to know, the S&Q mode will record the footage in higher bit rates than the normal movie mode does, even though it seems the other way around. Looking quickly at the settings, you can film 280 megabits per second at 120 FPS in normal movie mode and just 100 MBS in S&Q mode when you output the 120 FPS film to 24 FPS. Still with me? It seems like the 280 Mbps version will give you more information per second, but that's not true since it needs to be divided over 120 frames per second, which will give you 2.33 MB per frame. In S&Q mode, the maximum Mbps is 100, but these 100 Mbps are only divided over 24 frames, which is 4.1 MB of information per frame, which is almost twice as much information. In theory, this would mean that filming in S&Q mode would give you better images and more information in highlights, shadows and less noise. But according to Sony, you might not even see the difference because of YouTube compression. I made some recordings in both modes and let's see if we can spot differences in quality. Now, grading the footage is something else. I have a certain style which is quite easy to reach when you use normal color profiles, but it gets more difficult when you start using the flat image profile S-Log3. S-Log3 is designed to capture maximum information in highlights and shadows, and that is why you get such a flat image out of camera. S-Cinetone is a newer picture profile which should give you cinematic images and, according to Sony, doesn't need any color correction. I would still grade it though. You could compare it to the Eterna Cinema film simulation on Fujifilm cameras, which is different than log. With S-Log3, you get the most light information out of the sensor, where you have to sacrifice some information when you use S-Cinetone. If you have the time, it is great to use S-Log3, but if you need a cinematic look and don't have too much time, it is better to use S-Cinetone. There are two ways to turn on S-Log3, and it can be quite confusing on the A6700. The first way is to go to the video shooting menu, image quality, log shooting setting, and select S-Gamma3 or an even flatter S-Gamma3 Cine. If S-Log3 with flexible ISO is turned on, you won't be able to use any other picture profiles, which you can find at the exposure and color menu. Now, if you would turn the log shooting function off again, picture profiles are also available, and this is where you can choose to use this S-Cinetone, which is picture profile 11, and S-Log3 as well. With older Sony cameras, S-Log3 is selectable at picture profile 8 and 9, but as you can see, these don't exist anymore on the A6700 because they got a place in the main menu. S-Log3 is by default not allocated to a picture profile, but you could do it yourself and change other settings as well. So you can either turn on S-Log3 by using the log shooting menu or a picture profile, and it both will give you the same flat image and big dynamic range of 14 stops. By the way, if you like what I'm doing, then give this video a like, or even better, subscribe to my channel so I can keep making more camera reviews.